your introduction. But yes, I was community college. Back in 2006, I transferred to UCLA in 2010. I was undocumented back then. Went through undergrad undocumented up until the California Dream Act in 2013. I believe it was my last my last quarter at UCLA where I had DACA. I was a biochemistry major, and then we were figuring out how to get citizenship for everyone, and at the same time figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I felt that that piece of paper was very important at the time, and because there was just so many roadblocks to medical school. At that time, there was one person who was in medical school, and we all aspired to be, but we also understood their roadblocks and what that meant. So advocacy was very important to all of us. And I graduated in 2013. I had DACA. I then was able to finally go into like the medical world, and I became a scribe in the emergency department, because obviously you can't apply to medical school without showing some interest in some volunteer work in the medical programs, but you can't really do that when you're undocumented and the hospital's asking you for identification, which we don't have. So in that sense, DACA did open some like that door for me. And then I applied to med school, and just in the nick of time, I became a resident. And then I became a citizen in 3 years after that, which was about 3 years ago. And then I graduated medical school in 2020. And I graduated early because of the COVID pandemic and tried to help out the hospitals in New York City. And I stayed on here in New York City at Bellevue Hospital for emergency medicine residency. And I'm almost done with my first year, which I can't believe it. I have 3 months to go, and I'll be a second year, and it's a 4-year program. So I'm really excited. I'm happy to answer any questions. That was like a brief overview, but there was just so many challenges along the way, which I'm sure you're all aware of.
I want to ask, or just get you to share a little bit more about your involvement with ideas and what the experience of being undocumented before DACA, and the work that you and many of our friends and colleagues did to really change the way of the policies here at UCLA and even nationally.
You know, UCLA was not friendly to us back then. And we really had to build our own community. And that's where the 580 Cafe came into play, because we all congregated there. We had ideas, which had weekly meetings on Fridays, but we needed food, and we needed a place outside of UCLA where it wasn't an institution, it was more community. And I think that's what 580 gave to us, especially with Jean. She's always been a strong ally for us and always helpful. We all thank her so much. We couldn't have gone through UCLA without her. Here, you know, in any space you go to, you always need to find your people. And Jean was definitely our person. And within UCLA, you also have to find your people too, because administration can say one thing with the media, but you know, we were hungry. We were living off of like these little food things that said like it was a food waiver where you can get a free meal, and we were capped like at maybe 10 a quarter or something like that. And we would, you know, kind of save them for exam week or something when we couldn't like really go home. And so just little things like that, you know, we remember like, oh yeah, I remember we had to like, you know, save those and to have a good meal at some point. A lot of us spent the nights in the workroom of ideas, or we would be in the library. So it's just difficult to commute back and forth. There was also an apartment called the Cabin, and that's where everybody crashed, especially during finals week. And there was like, I lived there for a good year, and it was the most amazing place. You can always count on having a home after hours, and you can crash there, especially during finals week. That's where the parties were held, where the birthday, we still celebrated. We were a very happy community regardless of what was going on. So we have very fond memories, but UCLA at an institution was not very friendly. When I wanted to do research, we were not able to do it because we didn't have any funding attached to us. And so I was pleased when they were doing the UCLA undocumented research program for undocumented students. That was started after I graduated. And it's very beneficial, especially for people doing PhDs. You can't apply to these programs without having some research experience. And I remember very vividly telling my chemistry professors, my biochemistry professors, that I needed research for medical school. And they would say no, because they had spots for people that brought in funding through other programs at UCLA. And we didn't have that. So I never had research to my name, which is fine. Because I have community advocacy to my name. And I think that's very important too. With advocacy, there was EEC every year, the Immigrant Youth Empowerment Conference, and that was done by the AB 540 through IDEAS. It was a subset of IDEAS. And that was a powerful conference because it brought so much youth around the country to plug into what we were doing in California. As far as policy goes, a lot of the people from IDEAS went on to do big things in the community. And even within the community, they were still doing things while at UCLA. A lot of the actions were spearheaded by IDEAS alumni. DACA was also spearheaded by IDEAS alumni, such as Nancy. And a lot of these actions, people went to become, leaders in the community, fighting for not just a path for citizenship, but beyond that, beyond the citizenship paperwork, and more like human rights worldwide. Deferred action also happened through my time there, and it was just an interesting period because it happened when the class of 2012 was graduating. And that morning, there was just so much media coming to the graduation. And then, our UCLA dean came by and said hello, and then didn't stay for our graduation, but he did put his picture out there for people to see that he was very supportive of the undocumented student population there. So it was very community led. It was very IDEAS led, and I'm not sure how IDEAS is doing now, but as long as there's still a community, I think that's important.
Thanks, Barbara. If you have questions, you can either type them or just unmute yourself, because we certainly have space for that. And just the sharing of those memories, those stories that are the reality checks. I really appreciate you were mentioning that the community wasn't just sad, victims, but that had fun, and you had parties, and you cared about each other, and you had things that you looked forward to, and it wasn't just always having to demand something. And so that's part of my question is, in your experience and then moving into your professional life, how is that sense of relationship community? How does that really impact your ability to resist the powers of empire and political governance that would try to take that from you, that sense of agency and belonging?
Yeah, so that comes with resiliency, right? Because without your community, you're gonna have a really hard time. And everyone knows that there's power in unity. And that's why there's all these things to try to divide us. There's the narrative of the good immigrant and the bad immigrant. And so that's how the immigrant rights groups can start dividing at each other. Do we want comprehensive immigration reform, or do we want a piecemeal approach? And these things are all set out to try to divide us. So it's very important for everyone to have their own community, whether it's 2 people, 1 person, someone that you can always confide in, because when the going gets rough and you don't have anybody to confide in, you will burn out and you will not make it. It's just not feasible. If you don't have an outlet, someone to confide in, it becomes really hard, really, really hard to get through it. And it doesn't end just at, this is just life in general. It doesn't end with just immigration. It doesn't end with school. It continues on and on through your professional career. You're never going to agree with everyone, and not everyone's going to be your friend. So you need to make sure that you have a core group of people that will uplift you, and will also guide you, because it doesn't help you that everybody agrees with you either. You have to have some feedback and have some constructive feedback in how you are, and that's how you grow. So it's very important to just have that sense of belonging and have someone that's close enough to tell you, hey, I know you see it this way, but this is the way I'm seeing it, and maybe we can learn from that. And it's not antagonistic, it's more constructive.
Thanks. Questions or comments anybody wants to pop in here?
I just have a quick question. So I heard that you got a DACA, right? So you got DACA back then when you were at UCLA, and after that you say you got your citizenship. But how is it possible to have DACA and get a citizenship?
So back then, I had DACA for the last year, and it was an IDEAS member and a very close friend who actually applied for me, because at the time I was a tutor and I didn't feel like I needed, at that point, it just didn't feel necessary. We all learned how to live without a piece of paper. So I didn't have the money to pay for DACA. And so I didn't apply for it until maybe a year into its implementation. And then I got married. And so my husband is my sponsor. And that's how I was able to bridge the connection. However, I will say that it was very difficult because logistically, I did not come with a visa. And so that comes with a lot of issues. And there's bans and, nitty gritty things we were able to work out through to ultimately get my residency. And then as soon as 3 years, I applied for my citizenship. And it was during the Trump administration that I applied for my citizenship. So it was longer than it should have been.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So your DACA went out of
No.
use once you became a resident, correct?
Right. Yeah. You don't have both at the same time. It just, in fact, it expired while I was applying for residency, and I just waited for my residency. It just didn't make sense for me to reapply for DACA.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Because I got tons. But I would just also, Barbara, like to, to spring forward and say, what's it been like now moving into this more professional role, the kinds of things you're seeing that are impacting the community that we care so much about and that we're part of. You had mentioned that David is having a class on dental care for asylum seekers. What kinds of changes do you see are happening, and what more do we need to see to make sure everybody has access to health and well-being?
Yeah, so, there's injustices everywhere, including the medical system. There's a grave injustice in people receiving care right now with COVID. You see that people in lower income populations, Black and Brown communities are not receiving the COVID vaccine as much as wealthier white communities. So seeing those disparities is definitely something that you still need to work on. So as a professional, you are aware of these disparities in a very intimate way. And it's your job and it's my job to continue to advocate for the communities, especially now that you have this title. And it's a well-respected title, unfortunately. You know, everybody's voice is equal in my book. But when it comes down to health disparities, it's very important for MDs to voice out these disparities and the health injustices that we see every day. Specifically in the ER, we know that Black women, when they say they have pain, they're treated less than other people. And this goes back way long where, you know, there's this whole eugenics, very racist. You have to understand medicine comes from it's rooted in racism theory. So, and in some medical institutions, it's still being taught. Even recently, we used this thing for kidney function. And underneath it says African Americans, what is their normal, which is inappropriate and completely should not be used in the medical setting. So it's important for us to continue to using our voice to fight these injustices in the medical practices. And it goes everywhere, right? So in dentistry, it's less likely to also see dentists. So my husband's doing an elective to do dentistry for asylum seekers and also victims of violence. And so I'm glad because, you know, we were both undocumented at some point. We were both immigrants and we were somehow able to join these professions despite all the odds. But it doesn't just stop there. You know, you have to remember where you come from and you have to continue advocating, especially now that, you know, you have these rights as a citizen. It just never stops. And it's something that's so deeply ingrained into who I am that I can't imagine never doing it. And it could be in every single situation where you see a patient and you instantly know you're the first person they're going to see and the last one you're going to see because this healthcare system is so unjust. And that's why I chose emergency medicine, because we are serving people that have no one else, unfortunately. And it's very important to me, and it's very important to a lot of physicians, not just me, but to make sure that we deliver care to people who otherwise will not receive care.
Yeah. Great. And I have one more follow-up, and then I'll let everybody else have a chance to talk. Given your experience of coming through the struggles and the challenges of being undocumented and dealing with systems that aren't meant to really welcome you and provide you with the resources and access, can you just talk a little bit about how you found the way to care for yourself, the ways in which you were able to maintain your well-being physically, emotionally, spiritually, so that resilience doesn't just happen, it takes work. So what are some tips or ways or thoughts of how do you take care of yourself to continue this struggle? Because it's not going to go away.
It's really hard and it's a work in process. It's easier said than done. That's why it's important to have a community and you're able to talk to your close allies, close friends about how your day is going. But there's some days that you just have to cry it out. There's some days that are bad shifts and you just come home and all you do is cry for a little bit and just let the anguish go. And there's no shame in that. You just have to feel those emotions. Sometimes you just really have to feel those emotions. And I think that the underlying thing is that I love what I do. And I love my patients so much that that's what gets me through the day. You know, I'll be really tired and then I'll show up and I'll see a patient and they have nobody else, nobody that cares for them. And so it brings me joy and satisfaction and just, you know, fills my cup up. I also have my puppy. He is, he's actually really nice to have and just like consoles me. He, you know, he sleeps with me and he hugs me, and he's just such a bundle of joy. And of course, my husband, I can't thank him enough. He's been with me through so much. It's incredible sometimes when we think about, you know, the things that he has seen me go through and what we've gone through together. And those are the important things, because we've been in New York City and our family's been in the West Coast. And so we're each other's family. And it could be very hard, you know, knowing that your family's away, but then he's my family and he's my support system, especially when we didn't know anybody here. So our relationship has grown stronger and has, you know, really thrived under these very difficult situations. I'm working on eating healthy, because you have to eat healthy. I'm not the healthiest eater. I tell my patients, you have to drink water, don't drink as much coffee with sugar. But
With sugar.
I said with sugar, because I would always tell Jean not to drink coffee. But she drinks it black, so it's good. And then I realized I haven't eaten the whole shift. It's 12 hours and I have been on my feet seeing people. I haven't drank water. I haven't really taken care of myself. And that's not good. So like I said, it's a work in process. You know, it's really hard sometimes taking care of each other when you're taking care of others. But I know my boundaries. And, you know, when I first thought about getting this puppy, I thought, do I really need another being to take care of? Is that something good for me? But he's been absolutely marvelous. I can't not have him around. I love him so much.
He's listening.
Yeah, he's like, okay, she likes me. Yeah, but it's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's easier said than done. I love swimming and everything's closed right now because of the pandemic. And I know a lot of people are feeling very isolated right now, especially in having to do Zooms, but it's not the same as being with people in person. So it's a very difficult time to find community right now, especially if you're new to the space. Mm-hmm. But just keep trying. Just keep trying.
Great. Thanks, Barbara. Appreciate it. It's good to see you, and the puppy is just, yeah, adorable, just gonna say. If anyone other thoughts or questions or comments, we can just open it up and just have, you know, chat if you'd like, because you don't need to be on the spotlight the whole time, Barbara, but it's just me. Yeah, so anybody else have, Audie, you want to say something?
I'm like a third year now, but it's like my fourth year in college, trying to do college as an undocumented person. And like, at first I didn't find those spaces for like self-care and like eating well. Like I used to just like, I guess peanut butter is like good enough, you know, but now, I don't know, after like taking a year off, I realized, like, I know I'm like 6 years behind, but it feels like my journey is like similar in some ways. Like I have my cats that have literally saved my life. So yeah, I don't know. It's just very interesting. And like, I don't know. I'm really happy to be in this spot, like of the 580 Cafe, and like also Ideas. I think you asked if they're still up and running, and like I'm applying this week for one of their mentorship programs. So
nice.
Running.
Yay.
Yeah.
There's something you said that I wanna address. That you said I'm 6 years behind, and you're not behind. You're in your journey, wherever that is exactly where you need to be. You're not behind. You're not. There's some people that graduate in 3 years. It took me 7 years to graduate undergrad. And even then it took me another 2 years to apply to medical school. And then it's 4 years of medical school. And now it's going to be 4 years of residency. And so if you think of the span, yeah, I'm going to dedicate about close to 16 years of my life to get where I'm at. But the process was amazing. And I wouldn't have met the people I had if I was rushing through it. So I feel you that, it sometimes feels like everybody's doing this timeline of 4 years of undergrad. Then they go and do like 6-7 years of their post, like they either do a PhD, go master's, whatever. That's their timeline. Some people have all the resources in the world to do that. And we're doing it with minimal, resources. Being undocumented is very hard, especially an undergrad. And even before then, AB 540, when it didn't even pass, some people couldn't even go to community college because it was just so expensive. And then one point is like my mom, she graduated in her 40s, I believe, from accounting, and she got a business degree. So you're never behind, ever. Just keep going. Wherever you're at, keep going, because your life experiences, they don't teach you that in any school. So just enjoy that moment and enjoy those spaces as much as you can.
Thank you for that. I guess I meant like you're 6 years, 8 years. I don't know how much older you are than me, but just it feels like I'm like on my 4th year of the same journey of being like, but I completely feel like, I relate to that still. Like it may take longer, but I like it. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I'm not struggling that much anymore. I think that's also like what I wanted to say, like finding new boundaries. And like this past year, especially with the pandemic, I think made me realize like what I should really be focusing on. And like, even though school is important, like so is sleep and I don't know, like exercise and drinking water. So yeah, sometimes those things can, become an afterthought. So yeah. It's really cool that you've made it this far. So congrats.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing. I want to emphasize that my grades were not perfect. My GPA was below, I think I graduated, the UCLA specific GPA was like 2.7, 2 point something. Like grades aren't everything. And there are going to be people that really do believe in that. There are going to be some medical schools that really do a holistic approach to things, because it's very cruel to ask someone to work 30, 40 hours a week, do advocacy work, do mentorship, tutor, and then go to school in these high stress environments and get A's. It's very cruel. Yeah. So I just wanted to put it out there. If anybody thinks I'm a 4.0 GPA student, I'm not. And I don't believe in grades and I don't believe in exams. So I'm glad there's some changes in California, like specifically with SATs. And I strongly believe also that these tests are racist and they don't cater to those people like me who grew up with English as a second language. So unfortunately, it is a metric that people use, but not all people do.
Yeah. Excellent.
And none of my patients are asking me what my GPA is.
Precisely. Yeah. That goes out the window once you get into the thing you want. It becomes a relative conversation that who cares? They care. Do you care? Do you know what you're doing? Are you competent? So yeah. Other questions? Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Ari, because I think it's really important to recognize that what Barbara said, it's the process. It's where we are is where we are. And we have to hold it, being mindful of being in the present and not letting the past determine our movement forward, and just say we're here and we're still trying to do something. And even on the days when we're not trying to do anything, that's okay too. Because we're not machines, we're not a commodity, and that's the challenge of being part of institutions like UCLA or any other system, is you're kind of a product for what they are trying to brand. And brands are inherently racist because they mark you as property of. So you have to resist that takes, recognition of your own basic value and capacity to move forward despite what others are telling you. And so I think that's what you learn in community, is that we're here to lift each other up, because not every day can we lift ourselves up. So I think for me, it's the relationship rather than the transactional pieces that the world throws at us that's critical. Other thoughts or comments or questions? Corelli?
Yeah, I
Angel?
just wanted, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that, I mean, as an Asian American, undocumented, non-traditional, transfer student, and I think still now, because of my background, Asian, community, we don't really speak out about not, undocumented. So for me, to be honest, it's really idea, that community is too big for me to go out there. And yeah, I didn't think about it, but yeah, I don't go there because I think I still have that, how can I say, the shame life, even though that's not my fault, right? But that's the culture that I have. But then 580 Cafe is the only space that I could come and share and see, get the encouragement. And yeah, like what Barbara was saying, that sharing, it's really important for me because like I was talking with Jean, after I graduate, I was gonna go back to my country because, undocumented situation has been a long time taking my life in the United States, even though I do everything, paying tax and everything, but it seems like I'm never going to be accepted in that American society. So, and then that's why Jean said, hey, why don't you come and see, other people who went through this and this and that. And today, after, hearing what Barbara and this community really make me feel like, okay, maybe there's a chance for me to continue to live in this country, even though the undocumented situation, it's really, yeah, it's not easy, but at the same, yeah, it's not easy. And also it's really, I don't know how to express that. I think because for me to express that, I'm not used to, I used to hide it. But then now I could say, yeah, that was really traumatic in a way. To live in the United States, it was really traumatic. So that's why I want to say thank you very much for this time and you guys sharing. And that's really giving me a strength to go on and to share with my other Asian community, saying, hey, it's okay, there's no shame to be undocumented. So yeah, thank you very much.
I want to tell you that Ideas has had a lot of Asian undocumented people as well. Before, even before my maybe 2 years, David Cho was very active in Ideas. So much so that he and others also started like a subgroup within Ideas for Asian undocumented communities. And so there are a lot of people that have been trying to be active, and they were very vocal. It's just that, a lot of us that are now older, we get a little bit tired, and we need others to like continue the momentum. But David Cho was a very integral part of highlighting the Asian community during that time. So it's a very important to know, and we did this with Ideas a lot, to learn our story, because there were a lot of people before us that have been advocating for different things throughout this whole immigration journey. Do you remember David Cho? Of course you do, Jean.
Absolutely. He was
David and Jane.
Yeah, he was very helpful to students here who needed to have that cultural connection. He was Korean. He worked with a Korean undocumented student who was afraid, as Hee-Jung was saying, to talk about the shame and the embarrassment, because you just don't do that. Number one, her comment, the student, was, even if I tell my own community, they might turn me in. So she lived in absolute fear of being outed by her own community or by the university. And David took her hand in hand and got her a TIN so she could get into graduate school, because she didn't know how to do that and didn't want to ask anybody. So he was straight up. And that's the kind of community that I remember ideas was so strong in that those early days when there wasn't the resources that they have helped develop, it was more than just the policy change. It was the personal connection to each other and the caring about, hey, let me help you with this. Or like the person who helped applied for you for DACA. We did it. It just wasn't, okay, let's get the policy done. It was, let's know the person. And those relationships have carried on. And that's what I think is so critical about this group, and about what 580 is. We've worked together to create those connections where we still know who's doing what and who's had babies and who's moving where and who's leading what thing. It's the relationships that last, not the grades that you got at UCLA. And the encouragement you offer to others is just critical to see. You were right, when you were talking about med school, there was one person, and now there's, oh my God, I can't even think of how many undocumented students are now in med school because they saw you doing it and because you encouraged them and have encouraged others. So for me, it's that's just so beautiful. And having those experiences of the shared struggle becomes also the shared joy. Yeah.
It does feel very isolating, but when you feel like there's not others, but trust me, there's a lot of people, a lot. And the shame comes, of course, we've all experienced the shame of staying quiet. But once you start sharing with, a core group of people, like here, I could connect you to David Cho, and he will talk to you, and he will still talk, he's still an amazing person and tries to mentor people. And, but I would only know of David Cho because I was part of Ideas, and he was also, very strong in the community as well.
Yeah. Thank you. I see Jeanette joined us, another aspiring doctor who's been impacted by your story, Barbara. Tricia, oh my God, there's just so many, but it's just so cool. Corelli, did you have something you wanted to share, sweetie?
Yeah, Barbara, I just wanted to thank you for sharing space with us and sharing your story. I'm one of the co-chairs of Ideas now.
Nice.
And I think it's always so cool to hear I don't know, just the community y'all had back then. I think the core that started it all, and I think even your struggles, but in that, even celebrating together, I think it's really sick. And I just I don't know, I'm really inspired, I think, to move forward with Ideas and what we are fighting for now. And I think I really connected with the bad immigrant, good immigrant thing that you're saying, that I think it's really separating our community right now, because people got stuff and it's just they're not asked, that fire is not under them to advocate that much. But yeah, I just thank you for sharing your story, never forgetting about your community and always being there and continue to advocate, because that's what will bring change. But at the same time, to take care of one another, because at the end, institutions are nothing and we matter more. So yeah, thank you for that.
Wow, you're joining a legacy of all these co-chairs that are just amazing people.
Yeah,
you're part of history. Thank you for doing that work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of positive things come from it. And I just think it's really cool to see the many people who still stay connected, that it's not, you're in, you're out, and you move on. And as I was telling folks at other 580 gatherings, so we may work with the UCLA current students on one level. We are not UCLA centric. It doesn't mean once you're gone and get out, because that's not what community looks like. That's not how we do things. So you're still part of that. It's not that, oh, you're no longer there. It's no, that's not relevant to our discussion. And so one of the things I just want to remind folks here, and then to continue to build this for this quarter, this community table is really going to be focusing on bringing in the OG Ideas folks, basically, so that you get to see what is happening in the lives of, next week will be Domenica Castillo. I'm reaching out to Lynette and to Mario. I mean, this whole group of people who were variously involved in Ideas or as undocumented students to just come in and say, this is what I'm doing in life. Seth Ronquillo. you know, the way they're experiencing life now, to remind you that there's a point to this, and that there is hope and still good things you can do. I think we've seen a lot of the pulling back because of the 45 era, and needing to go back under wraps because of fear of pushback and other things. As much as we've seen also anti-immigrant hate escalate, especially Asian American and Asian hate increase because of the rhetoric and the buildup of all this supremacy and racist crap. So it's a tension we're trying to figure out, how do we bring people together without putting people at risk? Because you need to know there is a good life out there. And it doesn't always depend on your citizenship, as Barbara said. It's not the paper you hold, it's the person that you are and how you move in life, and the relationships we have. So I think we're going to keep building on that. And it's great to see you, Barbara, because it's been a bit, but you know.
And so long.
I know it's
also, we're always, you know, Nancy Quintero, you know, said, Jose, like we're always so invested in the cafe. We're very invested that the cafe continues to grow and just continues being, because without it, we all know life would have been so much different. It would be just catastrophically very depressing, very hard. And I'm not sure if I would have been able to get through UCLA without it. To be honest, it's really important to have this community. It really is. And it's really important really important to have someone that actually gets it and, you know, be that support. Like, you know, you married us. You're so important to our lives that we want you to always be there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we get busy, but we always come home, always.
Right. Right. And I will just also add back that none of this experiment would have worked without the input and the risk that students took to say, what is this? And how can we make this community, and not just what UCLA originally asked me to do was to create like a feeding program. I was like, no, this is not going to work that way. But, you know, that's the formula they use, is give them something and shut them up, which is an institutional model of keep them quiet, keep them under control. And, you know, so I don't think they understand. Yeah, they didn't know me then, so that's okay. And they didn't know the community, that the community would also, there would be synergy there where we built together rather than a top-down or charitable kind of dispensing of stuff. But what is it we need? So, and just so, again, thank you for being brave enough to walk across that street to what is only can be described as a very much the bastion of white supremacy. It's the church. So, you know, that took courage. Yeah.
It let walk me over. You know, I was afraid. I didn't know what it was. And I was not taught to really ask for help in that way. You know, it's just, there's this mentality also of being, you know, not being for asking for free food, even though you're hungry. So it was very hard. It was very, very hard. But Leslie said, hey, I'll go with you. Do you want to come? And that's how we built this community, because we were telling people, hey, do you want to come? I want to show you. And so I did that to other people, just like Leslie did that to me. Mm-hmm. So, and it just builds like that. That's just what community is about.
Yep.